When WWE or WWF fans think of Billy Gunn, chances are they also think of the tag teams he was involved with. From the Smoking Guns, Billy and Chuck, and the ultra-over New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn's overall legacy will be defined by tag team wrestling. This isn't a bad thing either, by the way. There's been many big single superstars who could only do the absolute basics when it came to tag team wrestling, but there's a crop of superstars who excelled in tag matches, and Billy Gunn absolutely fits into that category. As a tag wrestler, Billy was able to establish chemistry with his partners very quickly, and it seemed like any team Billy became a part of within the WWF would be successful. The Smoking Guns were 3-time tag team champions, the Outlaws became tag champions 6 times, and Billy and Chuck won the WWE tag titles twice. Even with all this tag team success though, the WWE tried to push Billy Gunn a few times as a single superstar. There would be radical changes in character to try and give Billy something new to work with, but it seemed like every time Billy was sent out into the wild all alone, he could never break out of the upper mid-card. I just want to point out too that this wasn't necessarily Billy's fault either. Billy Gunn, in his prime, was an exceptional superstar who had a ton of athletic ability and a great look too. But a series of creative missteps along with a lot of questionable decisions ensured that Billy would never reach the same heights as some of his peers. Today's video will take a look at Billy Gunn's failed runs as a single superstar. Following the breakup of the Smoking Guns, it looked like Billy was going to take on the role of a kinda western outlaw, for lack of a better term. Wearing a dark trench coat with his black cowboy hat, Billy Gunn looked like the bad guy from an old western movie, and I guess this worked, seeing as he was part of the Smoking Guns and all that. This was the first real attempt at pushing Billy as a single star, but it came to a screeching halt when his match with Bart Gunn on the December 16th, 1996 episode of Raw came to an abrupt end. Billy takes a stun gun and he doesn't move afterwards. Earl Hebner stops the match and it looks like Billy has suffered a severe injury. Billy's family run into the ring and Billy has to get stretchered out of the arena. It's later revealed that Billy suffered a neck injury due to the stun gun and Billy will need to take some time off. Researching this online, it looks like many people believe that this was a legitimate injury, but it wasn't. Billy did need to take time off to heal up his neck, but this stun gun spot was used to explain his future absence. It was not the cause of his problems. If you need further proof, just look at the dramatics from his family and Bart Gunn and that should be enough to tell you that this wasn't legitimate. It comes down to bad timing, I guess. Billy was about to become a heel but his neck was causing him problems. But this could have led to something. I mean, this whole stun gun thing ended an episode of Raw. You'd think there was some sort of plan put in place for Billy's return. Well, put simply, there wasn't. The Honky Tonk Man was talking a lot about his new protégé, a superstar who was sitting under the learning tree of the Honky Tonk Man, and whoever this superstar was, Honky promised that he was gonna be huge. The protégé was supposed to be WCW's Disco Inferno, but because Disco decided to stay with WCW, the WWF scrambled to find a suitable replacement. Well, they chose Billy Gunn, and he got repackaged as Rockabilly. Rockabilly made his debut at In Your House Revenge of the Taker and the big reveal was met with absolute silence. Billy came out dancing and smiling and it's one of those moments in wrestling where you can feel the disappointment from everyone involved. The renegade outlaw cowboy stuff seemed like an absolute masterful idea in comparison to Rockabilly. Rockabilly was also one of those gimmicks that you just can't imagine ever being successful. I mean, you don't imagine Rockabilly headlining WrestleMania against Stone Cold Steve Austin in the near future. It's one of those characters within wrestling that's destined to stay in the lower mid-card. With this in mind, a story was formulated where another single star, who felt like he was being treated poorly, would approach Billy Gunn and try to get Rockabilly to split away from the Honky Tonk Man. Jesse James, who was billed at the time as the real Double J, had also been stuck with a poor gimmick that failed to resonate with WWF fans, and James wanted to join forces with Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn accepted, and so the New Age Outlaws were born, one of the most successful tag teams in WWF history. We frequently call out the WWF or WWE for throwing two random superstars together in hopes that something comes of it, and it's a common criticism for tag team wrestling in general, but this was one of those rare times where it actually worked out really well. Rockabilly was awful, in my opinion anyway. There was nothing that gimmick had that could truly elevate Billy Gunn higher on the cards. If anything, it actually brought him down in comparison to his days in the Smoking Guns. And so this tag team that was formed featuring Billy Gunn and Jesse James became one of the very best things to ever happen to Billy in terms of his overall placement on WWF match cards. The New Age Outlaws became part of D-Generation X, and I think it was during this time where both the fans and management noticed that Billy was one of the best in-ring performers of the DX stable. You'd hear people talk about how underrated Billy was and how Billy was the better wrestler when compared to the Road Dogg. And I think this happened because Billy wasn't as outspoken as other DX members during his time in the faction. A big part of D-Generation X and the DX Army was their promos, yet Billy was easily the quietest member of the group, not including China, of course. But Billy was proving himself as a great in-ring competitor week after week, and it's actually incredible how different 1995 Billy Gunn was in comparison to the D-Generation X Billy Gunn. I do believe that someone backstage noticed this too. Billy Gunn leaving the group was teased during mid-1998, and by the time 1999 came around, the Outlaws were given the chance to work more singles matches. Billy won the Hardcore title in March, but he dropped the title to Hardcore Holly in a triple threat match at WrestleMania. The match also included Al Snow, and just a few months later, Billy Gunn left DX in order to turn heel. Billy would eventually align himself with Triple H in China, who had also turned their backs on the DX faction. And so the natural rivalry between Billy Gunn and his former partner, the Road Dogg Jesse James, would begin. This really should have been the catalyst for bigger and better things, and in a way it was. This was probably the WWF's biggest effort to push Billy Gunn as a solo competitor, and if you take a look at the booking decisions around this time period, you'll be able to see that Billy Gunn was definitely getting positioned to be a big single superstar. Billy was able to defeat the Road Dogg at the Over the Edge pay-per-view in 1999, and from here, Billy was set for bigger and better things. The first big stamp of approval that Billy Gunn earned from the WWF was his 1999 King of the Ring victory. Billy Gunn won the whole tournament, and historically speaking, this would indicate that big things were on the horizon. The King of the Ring at one point was considered a springboard for WWF superstars. If you won the tournament, then you were usually getting positioned to be a big player for months and even years that followed. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a few missteps when it came to the King of the Ring winners, and that doesn't mean that all winners instantly became main eventers, but winning the King of the Ring at one point meant you were probably going to see better days in the future in terms of your overall position. Billy Gunn winning the King of the Ring did temporarily change his position on the cards, and we'll talk about this in a moment. But all in all, the King of the Ring victory did not achieve much for Billy in the long run. It's one of those King of the Ring wins that kinda gets forgotten about because it didn't lead to all that much, but still, it provides us with evidence that at one point the WWF were taking Billy Gunn a lot more seriously in terms of where they saw him in the future. Gunn had all the tools to make it, but for whatever reason it just didn't happen. It wasn't for a lack of trying though. The WWF would book Billy Gunn into matches that were supposed to improve his overall ranking within the company while also expanding on his Mr. Ass character. We'll get to Billy Gunn's match with The Rock in a moment, but we should take a look at Fully Loaded 1999 first. Billy teamed up with China to take on X-Pac and the Road Dogg, and whoever won this match would have the rights to the DX name. X-Pac and the Road Dogg were still wearing the black and green colours and wearing D-Generation X merchandise. Chyna, Billy Gunn and Triple H wanted to claim ownership of D-Generation X for themselves, so this match here would settle that argument. Billy and Chyna failed to win, the heels were defeated, and so X-Pac and Road Dogg could continue using the DX name. But this match was also quite significant in terms of Billy Gunn's growth as a heel character. Chyna and Billy wanted to take DX away from not only X-Pac and Road Dogg, but they also wanted to take DX away from the fans. The faction was one of the most popular things about the Attitude Era, and a great way for a heel to get heat is to take away something that fans have paid money to see. A lot of people write off this whole DX rivalry, but I thought it was some good storytelling, and losing the DX copyright was actually great for Billy Gunn. It would have been a step backwards to go back to D-Generation X at this point, but as we all know, that's exactly what would end up happening anyway. The next pay-per-view after Fully Loaded was SummerSlam 1999, and this was a big night for Billy Gunn. Mr. Ass was going to work in the semi-main spot of the card against The Rock, one of the WWF's most popular superstars at the time. Unfortunately, this was also as high as Billy would go in terms of singles competition. From a King of the Ring tournament victory to a match against The Rock at SummerSlam, all signs pointed to Billy Gunn's career getting a huge push. Also, if you look back at the summer of '99 and all the episodes of Raw leading up to Billy Gunn vs The Rock, Billy Gunn would get the upper hand each and every week. It's surprising how much The Rock got his ass kicked by Gunn, but then it came to the mic work. The Rock was simply on another level when it came to promos. People joked that The Rock ended Billy's push with one single promo.
Bob? But my name's Billy. It doesn't matter what your name is!
But there was a lot more to it than just that. It was revealed by Bruce Pritchard that The Rock absolutely hated working with Billy Gunn, and it wasn't so much that The Rock was feeling like he was getting demoted, but rather The Rock felt that he should have been working against other main eventers and not trying to get someone else over. It's hard to say what's right and what's wrong here. Making another big WWF superstar means the company would benefit from having another big heel on their roster, but you can also argue that the WWF was already stacked up in terms of main event competitors. The SummerSlam match too was billed as a kiss my ass match, and the contest was really unremarkable. There just wasn't a lot there that would warrant a second or third watch. The Rock won the bout. Billy didn't have to kiss The Rock's rear end either, but rather he kissed the behind of a lady who he himself brought down the ringside. Not that it really matters. Speaking of the SummerSlam match, Bruce Pritchard said, "It didn't work. It just didn't work." I think the confidence in Billy's singles run quickly diminished. It wasn't just this match, it was leading up to it as well. When you look at the two talents, who are you gonna invest in? You're gonna invest in Rock. Unfortunately for Billy at that point, that's where it led. I think that was a lot of times a shortcoming of Russo, of if you book it, they will come. Not everybody, just because you book them in that position, should be in that position. And I think for Billy to succeed, maybe after the King of the Ring, he should have worked with someone else to build up to that. But being put right in with Rock and being put right into that position of being not just a top guy, but mega top guy, and not being able to run with them, it's a tough crowd. So, evil cowboy Billy Gunn didn't work, Rockabilly sure didn't work, and the singles run of Mr. Ass failed to get off the ground too in 1999. Billy Gunn had one more big main event of this run, a WWE title shot against Triple H on the September 6th, 1999 episode of Raw, but Billy of course failed to win the gold. Following this, Billy was put right back with the Road Dogg and the New Age Outlaws were reunited. Billy and Road Dogg won the tag team titles the same night they got back together, and DX would eventually reform and become part of the McMahon-Helmsley regime. Billy just kinda fell back in line and things continued on. It was maybe a case of too much too fast. It was maybe a case of the WWF's main event scene already being overcrowded. Maybe The Rock versus Billy Gunn was never going to benefit Billy Gunn because The Rock was so white hot. Who knows, but Billy Gunn was put straight back into familiar territory, and after 3 failed attempts, it looked like any chances of Billy becoming a single star was completely out of the question. With all this in mind, the WWF actually did try again to make Billy Gunn a singles competitor, and it happened in 2000 when he returned to the company after suffering from a torn rotator cuff. In October of 2000, Billy Gunn returned to the WWF to help Chyna during her feud with the Right to Censor faction, and because of a match stipulation, the Right to Censor were able to stop Billy using the name Mr. Ass. This would lead to Billy calling himself Billy G very briefly, before he changed his name to the One Billy Gunn. The One Billy Gunn then may be best remembered for his theme music and not so much the storylines he was involved with. This version of Billy Gunn wasn't given the same sort of main event push as the 1999 singles run, and really, it was the same Billy Gunn, only this time he wasn't obsessed with asses and he had a new haircut. With that being said, the One Billy Gunn was able to win the Intercontinental Championship. I could go on about how this could have and should have been another stepping stone for Billy Gunn's career, just like the King of the Ring, but Billy dropped the title just 2 weeks later to Chris Benoit at the Armageddon 2000 pay-per-view. It looked like the WWF just wanted to shift the belt from Eddie Guerrero to Chris Benoit, and the One Billy Gunn was used as a bridge and nothing more. It's one of those occasions where winning the belt actually does more harm than good, but hey, at least Billy can call himself a former Intercontinental Champion. Billy Gunn also ended up being one of the final 4 competitors in the 2001 Royal Rumble, but he failed to win the match, of course, ensuring that the One Billy Gunn wasn't going to main event WrestleMania. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even booked on the WrestleMania 17 card in 2001. It wasn't due to injury or anything like that. Gunn worked on the Raw after WrestleMania against X-Pac, a match that Billy Gunn lost, so I've no idea why he wasn't on WrestleMania. Edge won the 1999 King of the Ring, and Gunn felt bitter about not getting invited to compete in the tournament. The two had a match on Raw, and this was another match that Billy Gunn lost. Clearly, the One Billy Gunn wasn't going to achieve that much success in the WWF, and around this time period the company was beginning to shift their focus on the Invasion storyline. A WCW guy who came over to the WWF was Chuck Palumbo, and Billy Gunn would form a tag team with Palumbo, Billy and Chuck. It isn't a stretch to say that the Billy and Chuck combination was much more memorable than the One Billy Gunn single run, and it really goes to highlight how much more successful Billy was as a tag team competitor. Mr. Ass would return in the summer of 2003, but he was used in a lower mid-card capacity. There was that initial pop when he came back, and adding Torrie Wilson as his manager did give Billy Gunn new avenues for storylines, but it just didn't lead to much. Injuries plagued Billy during this time period, and after losing a match to Jamie Noble at the 2003 Vengeance pay-per-view, Billy would make a comeback at the 2004 Royal Rumble, but he was eliminated by Bill Goldberg. From here, Billy could mainly be found on the Velocity TV show. A short-lived tag team with Bob Holly failed to make fans care at all, even though they were showcased at the 2003 Judgment Day pay-per-view. The Great American Bash featured Billy Gunn taking on Kenzo Suzuki, but Gunn was defeated once again, and that was pretty much it. There'd be no further big pay-per-view appearances for Billy Gunn in a one-on-one capacity. Billy was then released from WWE later in the year, and in 2005 he'd find himself in TNA. When Gunn made an in-ring comeback to the WWE in 2013, he was once again put alongside the Road Dogg, and the New Age Outlaws had one more run that eventually led to the tag team titles. Search around the internet for long enough and you'll be able to make a list of guys who fans thought deserved bigger pushes in the WWF or WWE. Practically any wrestler who had a decent amount of success will have fans screaming that they deserved more, but the harsh reality is, at times, there was just better or more qualified people available on the company roster. Either that or other superstars were just bigger draws who brought in much more money. Billy Gunn falls into this category, I think. The 1999 run stands out because he was pushed so hard, but you have to remember that The Rock, Austin, Undertaker, Triple H, Mankind, all those guys were fighting to be the number one guy, and when the company tries to slot someone else in that already hotly contested spot, then it's never gonna work. The Rock disliking his work with Billy Gunn is a good example of that too. As mentioned at the top of this video though, being suited to tag team wrestling is not some sort of disadvantage. Classic tag team wrestling is a dying art form in many ways, and I know AEW has done quite a bit to try and rejuvenate tag wrestling, but it just isn't the same. That classic distinctive style of tag wrestling seems to be long gone, and when teams do refocus on the fundamentals, we seem to put them on a pedestal. It shows that not everyone gets it and not everyone is capable of pulling off good tag team matches. With all this being said, it's also unfair to call Billy a great tag team wrestler and nothing more, because that just isn't true. Billy had some great singles matches, but there were a lot of other things that went against him. Some weren't his fault and some maybe were, but I do think it's also unfair to say Billy Gunn dropped the ball because the hand he was dealt was already tough to begin with. Still, Billy didn't become a megastar in singles competition, but his tag team accolades are more than enough to make his resume stand out. Just because someone didn't main event pay-per-view after pay-per-view doesn't mean their run wasn't successful. I hope you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching and take care.